Hello and welcome to the Grudge Report featuring the Expanse. My name is Margaret Reeb and I am an employee of the SETI Institute, and I'm joined as always by Franck Marchis, who is a senior astronomer at the SETI Institute and chief science officer at Unistellar. Like I said, exoplanets, there you go. We're going to be talking a lot about an exoplanet today because we're talking about the Expanse Season 4, Episode 10, the final episode of the season, called Cibola Burn. And as I have in my handy background here, a lot of the plot takes place on Ilus, and we're going to get deep into what we think the ring builders are, the artifact is, this war between some ancient alien species, and what the heck is going on. We're going to get into that deeply. So if you aren't caught up on The Expanse Season 4, I suggest you hit pause, go get caught up, and come back because we are going to spoil a lot of really interesting stuff. So thank you for tuning in. I'm excited to talk about this episode. Though before we get to Ilus, let's cover off on a couple of things going on. Franck, let's start maybe with what's going on in orbit around Ilus. For the past couple episodes, we've had several spaceships in orbit who have kind of lost control of some of their major tools and drives on their spaceships, but it seems like that has been resolved, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So apparently doing, we're going to go back to what happened on Ilus, this turn off this magical system that was basically not allowing the spaceship to activate or to start, to ignite the Epstein drive. So start the fusion reaction that allows those spaceships to move around. And we had 3 spaceships which were stranded in orbit, but they were very close to the atmosphere. So basically the atmosphere of Ilus was slowing them down, dragging them down, and they were going slowly closer to the surface. So that was a stressful situation for the team, but they finally managed to restart them, and thanks to the help of the people on the surface, and move at higher altitude. So we have this amazing scene. You remember the Rocinante was attached with a cable to the Barbapicola, and Barbapicola doesn't need to be tethered anymore, so they release a cable, which is, we say 3-4 centimeters diameter cable. So you see it falling off toward the planet, we assume. So to really show that it fell into the planet, we have this amazing scene where we can see the cable burning down because it's entering into the atmosphere of the planet. So that's a nice scene, but I have a problem with the science of this scene.
Okay, let's hear it.
Did you notice it first?
No, I don't think I did. I just noted that it was interesting that they... I thought about space junk, to be honest. I thought, oh no, pull it back in. But I did like the visual of how it was falling through the atmosphere and it kind of was burning the same way that, you know, when shuttles or what have you re-enter our atmosphere, they have to have heat shields to prevent them from roasting. But what scientifically was wrong here, Franck? Do tell.
So to burn the cable, you need to have frictions, okay? And to have frictions, you need to have a high density of atmosphere. So you need to imagine that the atmosphere is very dense close to the surface, okay? And then the higher you are going up in the atmosphere, the thinner is coming, right? In the thermosphere, which is an area above 80 kilometers, the density of gas is so thin that there is no combustion possible. I mean, I didn't do any calculation to support my claim here, but I can just give you an example. Yesterday, I was watching the Inspiration 4 coming back on Earth, and they were announcing that we will lose contact with the Dragon vehicle because for a moment, when it will reach 80 kilometer altitude, the atmosphere will be so dense that we start having frictions around the capsule. So a formation of a plasma, and this plasma is kind of a cocoon that isolates the capsule from the rest of radio emission. So there is no communication. So on Earth, we need to be around 80 kilometers to have this kind of friction and this kind of destruction of material, erosion due to the heat. Okay, so I don't believe they were at 80 kilometer altitude, because remember they released a cable and basically it started burning
immediately
in 3 seconds. So of course it's a movie, so they could not show the cable slowing down and slowly going down toward the surface, and maybe 6 hours later burning down. So they have to do it quickly for the movie. So it's that's the problem I have. So I was looking around the altitude of typical things, because it's kind of good to have an idea of the scale of what we're talking about. The tropopause is around 20 kilometers. In an airplane, the highest airplane, the Sofia, flies at 12 kilometer altitude, like a Boeing 747. I'm talking about, not these military planes. Typically, the auroras are also around 80 kilometers. Those are these colorful features that you can see on the pole. Above this, it's what we call the Kármán line, which is 100 kilometer altitude. So that's basically the definition defined by the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale, which defined the beginning of space. Okay, you may have remembered there was a huge debate recently because Virgin Galactic flew the team at 80 kilometers only, so it's not above the Kármán lines. So
they weren't necessarily in space. Yes, it's funny, the intricacies and just like I'm sure a lot of science went into it, but it's kind of arbitrary, right?
It's totally arbitrary, yes.
Yes.
It's just because it's an easy number to remember, we'd say.
It's a technicality, I should say.
Because the physical difference between 80 and 100 is none. Basically, you are in the thermosphere, if I remember properly. So the behavior of the particles there, the atmosphere is more or less the same. So there is no reason to say that 100 is more space than 80. Okay, I would have put the limit of space at the mesopause at 80 kilometers to be done with it. But hey, I'm not going to argue with that. That's the decision. So, and then when you're in space, if you fly toward up, you will see first the International Space Station, which is 410 kilometer altitude, so 250 miles. I made some conversion in miles for this discussion, just for you. Then we have the Hubble Space Telescope, which is 570 kilometers, so 350 miles. And then Inspiration 4, I just mentioned them. They flew at 585. 370 miles above the Hubble Space Telescope, above the International Space Station, and that's
Richard Branson.
That was a decision, a conscious decision. I don't know if you watched the Netflix show, but this is coming from the team. They asked to fly as high as possible to make a statement that they are truly in space. Here, we're not like 80 kilometers; we are 585 kilometers. Wow. That must have been an amazing view. I wish.
Oh my gosh. I know.
And then after this, there is a lot of satellites, but you're going to reach an area which is 36,000 kilometers roughly, 22,000 miles, where you have all the geostationary satellites. Those are satellites which orbit around Earth at the same speed that Earth spins on itself. So they're basically seeing the same location of Earth all the time above them. And extremely useful for communication, of course. If a country wants to have a very efficient communication system, it will place an geostationary satellite above, and that will be basically the way to communicate easily on this part of the world. So yeah, that's all. Just a cable burning in the atmosphere brought all of this discussion. But
it's very interesting, and I would imagine that the line of atmosphere versus space that we arbitrarily decide would vary from planet to planet. Right now, all that really matters to us is Earth. But it's not the same, right? So who knows how far? I understand that Ilus is slightly bigger than Earth.
Yes, it was.
Please correct me in the comments, but
20% bigger, if I do remember the previous show, they mentioned that. So the atmosphere is not going to be that different. meaning that the spacecraft here, they are probably flying at the same altitude than Hubble Space Telescope, so they're probably in the thermosphere as well. Okay, they're not that low. They're not at 80 kilometers.
Right.
Good though.
It's an interesting time for spaceflight, particularly civilian spaceflight here on Earth. Well, let's talk about your favorite subject, Franck, which is asteroids, because season 5, I mean, the whole show is full of asteroids, but season 5 definitely has some major plot points surrounding asteroids that we see the groundwork is being laid here in this episode. So maybe we should start with asteroid mining, which is something that has come up a lot in this series. But we have Ashford, who's going after Marco, who will become our big bad. And he finds out that Marco has been interested in some asteroids and some abandoned asteroid mining settlements. What did you make of that?
Well, I mean, we heard a lot during the show about asteroid mining, but that's the first time we see the mining, or we see the remnant of the mining in the show. And in fact, I had no memory of to have seen that when I watched this show. It's weird. It's the second time that I realized that I was watching asteroid mining. So when the spaceship arrived, you can see there's an asteroid which is kind of carved. He has this typical unnatural shape. And they mentioned there are around an asteroid called Cluster, which was mined 60 years ago, but the mine was abandoned because there was only an asteroid made of iron and nickel. So first of all, there is no asteroid called Cluster. I'll check. So maybe I misunderstood, but there is none. And they could have used, I mean, there is so many M-type asteroid made of iron and nickel. They could have used an existing one, but that's okay. That was the only issue I have with the science. And then you see in the image, you can see that there is some kind of material used to do asteroid mining. I don't really understand what they are, but there is a net as well. I don't know if you've seen this moment. He mentioned that there is a net, and the net has been dropped here recently. So that's the proof that Marco was around.
Somebody has been around.
So let's go back to Earth. Asteroid mining is an idea that comes regularly. Okay, it's been more than 30 years we are talking about that now. The idea is to use the material, to exploit the material from asteroids, comets, minor planets in general, to collect ore, okay, to manufacture, to produce material, propellants, you name it, something, okay. So the reality where we are so far, we are not mined yet an asteroid, as you know. Mm-hmm. The only thing we have done, which is the closest, is we have collected samples of asteroids, meaning that we send a spacecraft, Hayabusa 2, both from JAXA, and OSIRIS-REx from NASA, for instance, which went to one asteroid, Itokawa, Bennu, and Ryugu. It's Ryugu and Bennu. Which are kind of near-Earth asteroids. So they're nearby. They're easy to go. Okay? We don't talking about something far away in the main belt. And they collected samples using different type of techniques that elaborated in labs. So I was looking, the sample that collected is super small. It's less than 1 milligram for Hayabusa of Itokawa asteroids. And for OSIRIS-REx, it will be 60 grams.
And was it OSIRIS-REx also after the sample, it was sort of losing some of the sample too? One of them I read it was leaking. That. So it's I guess it's very hard to take a sample of an asteroid and to keep it secure.
Yes. So the reason it's difficult to mine an asteroid to collect a sample is because first you have to go over there and bring it back. So that takes a lot of energy. And two, we don't really understand the physics of asteroids. I mean, when they arrive around Bennu or Ryugu, they were very surprised by the structure of those two asteroids. the surface was basically made of boulders. Okay, and they were hoping to find kind of a pound of dust or something like this, so they could basically use their machine to collect. It took them a while to find a right spot to send this artifact to collect the sample. So that's a problem. We're still discovering what asteroid is made of. And every time we have a picture of a new asteroid, it surprises us because it's very different to what we were expecting. So that's one problem. So what we are on Earth now, where there was two companies, there was two, another is one, that were created recently in 2000, I forgot the year, 2012 for the company called Planetary Resources. You probably remember that they announced with the support of a large number of famous entrepreneurs from Google, but also film director like James Cameron, etc., that they will develop the technology. I'm reading the statement that they wrote at the time to be able to create a fuel depot in space by 2020 by using water from asteroids. So today, Planetary Resource, all these assets of Planetary Resource has been bought by a company called Consensus, which is into a blockchain. And the company, to my knowledge, is not doing any research in asteroid mining. And as you know, we don't have the fuel depot of in orbit around Earth yet. So it's been kind of a failure, I will say. But there's some technological development done by this company. There is another one called Deep Space Industries. They still exist. They're not very communicating much about the current activity, but they still have financial support, and they still plan to develop effort to examine, sample, and harvest asteroids. I'm just quoting them here. So they are planning to develop mission that will explore asteroid and then learn how to collect samples for the private industry and harvest asteroids. So we're not there. We're not there yet. And I will just say, I look for this calculation that a nice type of asteroid, so an asteroid like 25% of the asteroid in an near Earth population are like this, of 10 meters, that's 650,000 kilograms, will have 50 kilograms of platinum and gold. And if you do the same kind of research for M-type asteroid, it will be 10 to 15 times more. So there is material to collect, rare material, rare minerals, but also rare metals to collect on asteroids. But we still don't know how to do it, and the private industries is still not doing it. So it's going to take a while.
Yes. I think it would probably be wise to set up some sort of station on the moon, get that down first, and then go for asteroids. Because asteroids can be quite far away. They're constantly moving. We don't know very much about them, unfortunately. So baby steps. But I think it's our future if we make it that long. Do you agree, Franck? It's
our future. There is no way we will survive in space if we don't do mining of asteroids to collect at least the water. It's important. There is no way, because if we rely on Earth only, economically speaking, it's going to be very expensive, because we're going to have to every time take an object from Earth and then take it away from the gravitational well of Earth to bring it to space. So let's just use material in space instead.
Yes,
I will say that we do have a lot of possibility of collecting different type of material. But we still really don't understand how to do it, like concretely speaking, like how to harvest this material. And mining is difficult. I have a friend of mine, who works in mines as an engineer, and he explained to me that, in fact, it's not like you take a sample of a rock and there is 5% of cobalt, 10% of nickel, etc., and you separate it easily. No, there is an industry behind it, which is extremely complex, and a lot of process that you have to do And we really don't know how to do this process at zero gravity or almost no gravity, macrogravity in this case. It's going to be a big, big challenge.
It'll be interesting to see. If you're young and watching this, it might be wise to go into some sort of study where you could lead the charge, because we depend on you. Yes, thank you. Stay in school. Okay, so asteroid mining is definitely an interesting topic and something that I think we're on the cusp of probably in the next 100 years. We'll see. 2020 was definitely a stretch goal. And as we see, we didn't make it, but stretch goals are good. And then there, of course, is Marco, who wants to use asteroids as a weapon, which is the last scene of this season and this episode, where he's talking about, he's sort of explaining all the things that have been hinted at through Bobby's narrative arc on Mars and then the Belters narrative arc with Marco. He's going to use Martian stealth tech that he got and wrap it around asteroids and then hurl it at Earth. And everyone seems to think that he's going to hurl it at a Belter station, Tycho or Ceres, but no, he's going for the big kahuna, which is Earth. So that's very scary. And I think in some of our episodes around season 5, you did some great calculations about what the impacts would be like, correct?
Yes, and it's interesting because in season 5, we have 2 episodes where we argue whether or not those asteroids are metallic asteroids or stony asteroids. And in fact, the answer to this question was in the season 4, because in the season 4, they specifically say cluster is an M-type asteroid, and he took 2 fragments of it with him. And you can see this, one of the station has a piece of gigantic rock. And I could even estimate the size of the rock based on the size of the spacecraft if I wanted to. So in fact, we could have, if I had watched this season more carefully, especially the last 10 minutes of this season, we would have saved us a lot of time in our conversation.
But where's the fun in that, Franck?
Yeah, I know.
Where is the fun in that? Yes. So if you're interested and you haven't seen our episodes on season 5 yet, check those out, because we talk a lot about Marco's plan, because it does come to fruition.
And the dreams are not big enough for the Belters. He started revealing his true personality in this episode, obviously.
Yes, very much so. And there's a lot of it in the coming season, and I'm sure there will be a lot of it in season 6 whenever that premieres. Anything else on the asteroids, Franck, before we move to Ilus?
No, let's talk about exoplanets.
I do want to make a brief stop. This is not scientific and it won't take very long, but I did appreciate the Amos scenes once again in this episode. The actor is just amazing when Amos and Marchis are kind of talking to each other, and Marchis hits Amos because he thinks that Amos is going to beat him up. The way that Amos turns and looks at him with blood in his teeth and this crazy expression on his face, it was scary, but also a perfect character moment. So, yes. And I know you like Amos, so I had to bring him up.
You notice the scene when his fingers is growing back into the...
Yes. I mean, it's great technology. I don't know if I'd want a front row seat to watching my own finger regrow, but I don't think Amos would care. He probably wouldn't be anything but a regular day to him. Yes, so they have great medical technology, which is pretty awesome. So let's talk about Ilus, which I think is kind of the name that everybody starts to use after all the conflict that happens. And what exactly is going on? So let's talk about Ilus itself. It seems like this is a planet that the Ring Builder Society modified heavily, correct?
Yes.
Even
in the under the crust, it seems to have some kind of activity, some kind of modification. And in orbit as well, with the 13th moon, which has space to the same distance and looks like some kind of device to protect the planet.
Yes. And there's a line where Alex, the captain of the Rossi, when he's speaking with Holden, says, "Oh, Holden, 800 kilometers, you're 800 kilometers away from where you were to begin with. Or he essentially, when everybody went through that purple passageway, I think they went to a different part of the planet, which supports your understanding and my understanding as well, that the whole planet has been turned into a refinery or some sort of mining operation of the ring builders, and they've built a bunch of things beneath the planet, which I'm pretty sure is supported by the books. They have living quarters, libraries. The whole planet is modified. And I suspect that they were probably mining the ore that the belters were mining themselves. There's some resource that is usable, maybe for energy or some other reason. Do you agree, Franck?
Yeah, I think Ilus is a mine planet. I don't really know what they were using it for, but it seems to be basically for either energy or production of material. I would say it's energy because those spikes that you have behind you, those structures, seems to be capable of emitting a large amount of energy or sending energy. So, and they are everywhere on the planet. You see the scene, the fantastic scene when Holden's coming out of one of the structures, and then he looks around and he can see the entire planet. In fact, it's covered with those structures, and there is a network. Because after the tsunami, the thin layer that was hiding this complex pattern is visible. And also after they wake up the planet as well. They woke up everything.
And let's talk a little bit about the ring builders, because we know there are two alien societies. One is the society that created the ring builders, and one is the unknown adversary that took out the ring builders. And there was some ancient sort of war. But I'm very intrigued about what they looked like or how they presented themselves, because when Miller, he's sort of like the manifestation of the proto-molecule, and he in the last episode is trying to use the artifact, which is that circular, it almost looks like the eye of Sauron to me. He's trying to use that to kill the proto-molecule. He takes over this machinery, it looks like. He's got a metal face and a bunch of wires, and he is moving around. So I'm a little confused about what that was, if that was a representation of what the builders look like, if the builders don't have bodies. What was your take on all of this?
So I always say, I think the builders, on the top of changing the planet, also created an I would not say ecosystem, because they're not like biological life, but they develop this kind of robotic life. And those swarm that we see again in this episode, which they die when they come close to the sphere, the artifact. And I think this is because this artifact is made to kill them. Okay. So now I don't know if the ring builders looks like those artifacts that they created. I'm not sure. Maybe because look, us when we want to create a robot, we will try to, an advanced robot will look like us, but a washing machine will not look like us. Okay. Right. So there is no reason. There is no reason to create a machine that look like us if the machine has a very simple task. And the task of those swarm of whatever the machine was to defend the planet. So I don't know what they look like, but there is something that Dr. Okoye said when she wakes up. She said, "I feel the consciousness," and I have the feeling that those ring builders, they probably were not exactly in the same. They were not like us, definitely not, and they seem to have this kind of ants or bees, kind of network consciousness, and they were all connected.
Hive mind.
That was the word I was looking for. Thank you. And they were connecting from each other through this consciousness. What did they look like? No idea. But frankly, it was not really important for them. What was important is to be part of this entire consciousness and be able to see things at the level of atoms, so see the greatness of the universe.
It's crazy.
So
yes,
they are not biological like us. They were something else.
Well, and some people think that that's potentially where humans will go if we last that long, right? It might be beneficial to upload your consciousness into a computer or into some sort of machinery where everyone else is, because you can live for a very long time in that respect. You can be a lot of places at once. So maybe they've just transcended where we are in terms of our civilization.
They basically develop themselves to the point that they don't need to have this biological body. And that's allowed them to travel, as you mentioned, which is a very important part of becoming an advanced civilization. So, you know, there is a metric to measure the advancement of a civilization called the Kardashev scale. So,
yes, explain.
The number one, Kardashev number one is a civilization that has a control and can store the energy of its planet entirely. We, Kardashev 0.8 or something like this, I cannot remember this number. So we're not one yet, meaning that we can produce 80% of energy that Earth receives. To very simplify this. I'm not 100% sure of this number, but it's something like that. Then we have Kardashev 2, and this is a civilization, a stellar civilization. In this case, they are a control of the energy coming from a planetary system, so that the sun or the star and all the planets around. So, for instance, they build this gigantic Dyson sphere, and they collect the energy. I was going to bring up the
Dyson sphere. Yeah. Yes.
They collect.
Yes, and that's, as an aside, there are people who are looking at brightness patterns of older stars to see if there's any sort of anomalies that could be worth looking into. For instance, if a civilization did build something near their star to harvest the energy. So Dyson spheres are awesome.
So we're looking for those Dyson spheres using the TESS telescope, or in the past, the Kepler telescope. And in fact, Type 1 civilization, we will be looking for them too. One day when we're going to be able to observe exoplanets directly and measure the flux coming from those exoplanets directly. We can image Jupiter-sized exoplanet, but very soon we'll be able to image Earth-sized exoplanet like Ilus. And we will be able to measure the amount of energy from this planet. So if there is a very advanced, I'm going to make up something here, like a very advanced civilization like Ilus, that produce a lot of energy, while using this LUVOIR-ABEX telescope, we will be able to detect them, because we will see the heat coming from this civilization or the light coming from this civilization. There is a paper that's been published recently mentioning that it will be possible to detect the light of megacities on exoplanets with the LUVOIR telescope. So Kardashev 1 could be detectable, Kardashev 2 as well, but there is also people looking for Kardashev 3. And those are the galactic civilization. And the reason for which I'm talking about them mostly here is because I think the ring builder was on the verge of being Kardashev 3 civilization. They built this system of rings that allow them to go from one part of the galaxy to the other one instantaneously. They were capable of modifying planets. We have the proof with Ilus. Mm-hmm. And probably they were also capable of modifying stars. That's not very mentioned. So I think they were kind of almost a Kardashev 3 civilization, spanning through the entire galaxy and using the galaxy itself and all these elements, sun, planets, as a source of energy. And the problem when you start expanding in a large part of a galaxy, you may encounter a civilization which was almost at the same time than you there 2 billion years ago, which is also trying to expand in the galaxy. And there is only one Milky Way. So it happens what's always happened in this case. There is a war, and that's the destruction we have seen. I think the ring builder were destroyed by the entity. That's the way they call them in the book, which are aware I don't know if there was multiple of them, civilization, maybe one civilization that allied to destroy the ring builders. And the way they destroy them, it's unclear, but we have one artifact on Ilus. The sphere, the black sphere, is kind of a way to destroy the protomolecule, so destroy the ring builders, and that's what they did. So that's what Miller did. Apparently, he managed to turn off completely the planet and the technology on the planet.
Yes, good old Miller did that for us. But it is a very interesting question of what led to this conflict. Probably resources or something to that, spreading their way of thinking across the galaxy.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious to see what happens. And it's also interesting to consider what would happen if humans encountered something. This is, again, I'm making stuff up now, but if we did find a planet that had artifacts on it and we encountered it, how would we understand what was going on? I mean, the crux of the Expanse so far is just this ancient alien technology that's far above our heads, is wreaking havoc on everybody, and everyone's trying to get a piece of it and use it to their own ends, but no one really understands it. Mm-hmm. So it could be the end of everyone. It's an interesting thought experiment. I was very surprised that people wanted to stay on Ilus, because if I had just been subject to an ocular parasite and a tsunami and a corporate security that wanted to murder, I would say, I think I'm going to head out. But also, this does speak to the fact that the Belters don't have that much opportunity in our solar system. So they want to stay. But that's my hot take.
If the alternative for them is to basically continue to survive on asteroids, I understand they prefer to have their own planet where they can make a lot of money, apparently, because they mentioned in the show that they sold the array for a good price. So yes. Something important you mentioned is the fact that, in this case, we are seeing a human encountering a civilization which is extremely more advanced. So advanced that they can even change fundamental physics. And I think that protomolecules it's kind of a piece of the technology that they use, but they probably live in an alternate kind of dimension. I don't know how to express that. So their science, their perception is extremely different to us. So we don't understand it, but we see things, and the protomolecule is kind of the tip of the iceberg of this gigantic science and that they are capable of doing. And that's frightening because, it's imagine the amount of progress we made over the past 1,000 years. In 1,000 more years, a civilization which is 1,000 years older than us could be so advanced that it will be everything they will be doing will look like magic to us. And
yes.
And I think that's what we see here. The magic, it's not magic, it's technology that we totally don't understand.
Like the purple gates, the transportation system. When you look at it, it does look like something out of a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
Right? It looks like something that's magical or somebody has superpowers, but it's really just a highly advanced civilization. And it's also interesting to think about because Earth and our star are relatively young compared to other parts of the universe and the galaxy. And so there might be somebody out there who's far surpassed our understanding of reality and physics. So that's very scary to consider, exciting and scary. So
that's scary.
Who knows?
That's why we are the SETI Institute. We are searching for them, remember?
I agree, but it could be, it's one thing to search and it's another thing to try and interact, I would say. I am all for understanding what's out there. But that's also an answer to
the solution. There is 3 cases. The civilization is 1,000 years more advanced than us, and they really don't care about us.
I agree with that.
We are like tiny ants in the mine. The civilization is 1,000 years younger than us, so it will take us a time to detect them, to see them. Okay, And then the civilization is almost the same age than us, right? The same level of technology. But it has to be close to us at the same time. So the likeliness is extremely small. It may happen, but there is a very small percentage of chance that two civilizations by 20 light years away from each other reach the same technology at the same time, unfortunately. So we are probably in the universe, there is a lot of civilization like ours. We will receive, a lot of civilization like ours that emitted radio wave lasers, and we will receive them, we will see them. We will know they're here, but it's very unlikely that we'll be able to communicate with them for those reasons.
Yes, yeah, very much so. But if there was a civilization that invented ring gates, I would certainly want to talk to them, but I'd also want to understand their position on things before I let them know that we're here. But it's all it's just amazing to think about. And I mean, if Ilus was a real place, I would definitely be the first one to buy a ticket to go, because I think it would be fascinating.
Because you like to work on gray rocks and see weird structures everywhere and run a tsunami and some flying metallic.
I'll get vaccinated against the ocular parasite before I show up anywhere. That's for sure. And I'm going to become best friends with Dr. Okoye. So if anything happens, I get taken care of.
Good.
Yes. But that's why it's important to look at what's going on outside of our solar system and galaxy. It's very intriguing, obviously. That's why we both work at the SETI Institute, Franck. Anything else on this episode?
No, I think it's the last one for the season. So
yes,
we'll do another one for the season 6.
Season 6. We'll probably do a recap before the season 6 season premieres. And like I mentioned in the last video, we are also going to be talking about the Foundation, which begins next week, which should be exciting. And thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us break down the science and other parts of The Expanse, which is an amazing, amazing show. So thank you very much. As a reminder, we've talked a lot about the SETI Institute this episode, but if you don't know, the SETI Institute is a nonprofit that is committed to understanding the nature, origin, and prevalence of life in the universe. So we're looking for Iluses out there and everything in between. If you're interested in the SETI Institute, you can check out the variety of links below, which will give you more information. And if you enjoy the show and the mission of the SETI Institute, and if you're interested and willing, please do give us a donation. As I said, we are a nonprofit. So thank you very much, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.